Today we're checking out the HappyRun G300 Pro. So I never actually heard of HappyRun before, but as I browsed their website, there was one bike that really stood out to me, and that's the G300 Pro. The G300 Pro is actually advertised as an electric dirt bike. It kind of reminded me of the Frigo X2 Pro because it does have a hub motor, but there are some differences, mainly that this is 72 volts. This was actually delivered on a freight truck because I believe it weighs about 200 pounds. So definitely a lot heavier than the Frigo. It may even be as heavy as the Surron, we'll see. But I'm really excited to unbox this and put it together. So let's get to it. Alright guys, here it is, the HappyRun G300 Pro fully assembled. We had to install the front wheel, the pedals, the rear shock, front fender, and then obviously the handlebars. And so yeah, on first glance, this definitely reminds me of the Frigo X2 Pro. It reminds me of a Surron. Looks like a stock Surron seat, stock Surron fender. Very large storage for the battery right here in the frame, and a pretty beefy rear shock. It is actually significantly heavy. We'll get into the weight later, but this was delivered in a freight truck, and it was pretty heavy to lift the box up and move it around. So just keep that in mind. I really like the orange and black colorway, obviously. That's kind of like a RunPlayBack type of color. And you do have some of these carbon fiber style accents on the fenders. A really interesting number plate. This is just like a kind of like a steel grid pattern, diamond pattern over here, a very bright front headlight with a little bit of a grille as well. So even though it does have pedals, you're going to attract a lot of attention. It's most likely in a gray area of where you're allowed to ride this thing. So let's just walk through all the features. So the first thing you'll notice are these 17-inch tires. So these are 70-117s, very common size, DOT size, big knobbies, very similar to a stock Surron. These are obviously good for off-road. So DY Island brakes are okay, kind of generic brand in my opinion, but these are pretty easy to upgrade if you need to. You also got a thick rotor over here, and the axle is pretty easy to remove. This nut over here, and on the other side you use an Allen key to tighten it. You also have some bolts on the stanchions to secure the front axle. Integrated front fender, definitely the Surron style fender. I don't know too much about this fork, but it says it's a Tucson. Never heard of that brand before, but it looks to be pretty standard for this class of e-bike. Again, this is the front number plate. Very interesting design, a diamond pattern, some really sharp edges here, and looks to be pretty aggressive. You also have this front headlight, and I'll turn the bike on so you guys could see it. Super bright headlight, definitely something that will be visible at night. You kind of have the standard stem mount with a adjustment bar over here. Now I'm actually not a fan of this sort of adjustment bar. I never feel like it gets tight enough for the bars to stay put. These things always move on me, so I think I might remove this. I have just a regular stem mount. That'll actually be something that I'm going to do before I do the first ride. We have some ergonomic rubber grips, and for the levers of the brakes, I actually reversed them because I wanted the rear brake to be on the left side and the front brake to be on the right side. So these are actually flipped upside down so I could mount them like that. I also disconnected the brake sensor for the left rear brake, but I did keep the front sensor on for the front brake because when you turn the bike on, it actually automatically goes to park mode. So the only way to get into the drive modes or the other PAS modes is if you squeeze the brake, and boom, now you're at 1. If you wanted to completely disconnect your brake sensors, you won't be able to get into drive mode, so you do have to have at least one of them connected. Typically, I don't like to have brake sensors connected. I just like to modulate the brakes without having to cut off the motor. Here's some more controls over here. This is obviously for the headlight, and you also have some turn signals, so that's left. So you get the sequential left on the rear taillight, right, same thing. There you go. You also got the horn, very loud. And here is the center mounted color LCD display. Nice and big, very bright display. Kind of shows you everything you need to know. You got the display controls right here. Over here we have a right hand half twist throttle. I'm actually not a fan of a half twist throttle. I've never really been a fan of those, especially for these really high powered e-bikes. You know, this one is 72 volts. I just never feel like I have all the control that I want just through the half twist. Again, this is probably going to be something that I swap, and I'll show you guys what I do. I'll probably put a full twist throttle on here, and I think I have a throttle that'll just connect directly into the bike. Uses a standard 3-pin Higo connector, so that should be no issue whatsoever. And since I'm going to swap the direct stem mount and not have this angled bar over here, I'm going to swap it in with the riser handlebar that I have. I'll show you guys what I do in a second, but it's not going to significantly alter the way this bike will ride. It's just a preference for me, and I have these parts lying around anyway. So to access the battery, you have 2 keys over here, and the front and the first one is to pop the lid open, and this is how to access the battery. So it is protected by a lid, very similar to a Surron. Put the second key in, unlock, and that should come out like so, and there you go. Again, it looks very similar to our Frigo X2 Pro battery, and we have 72 volts, 30 amp hours with a watt hour capacity of 2,160 watt hours. So a pretty beefy battery. This should give you plenty of range depending on how you like to ride. So yeah, this is kind of what makes this bike pretty powerful. The 72 volt battery. I think the controller is located under here. I don't think it is hidden on this side, and I think you could access it by unscrewing the bolts on the bottom. My guess is that this is using a far driver controller, but I won't know until I take it out, and not really going to do that for this initial review. If it is a far driver, that means that we can tune it up to how we like to ride, which would be pretty awesome. Like I said, here's the Surron style seat. In fact, this is pretty much a Surron seat, I think. It has all the same bolt patterns as far as I could tell, and it also uses a Surron style fender, which goes in the same bolt pattern as well. And then here we have the rear shock, which is a Yopi box rear shock. I don't know what brand that is, but it definitely has the standard preload and rebound adjustment if you want this bike to be lowered, or a bigger shock if you want it a little bit higher. Just sitting on the bike, I think the shock was fine. I just don't recognize the brand. And I believe the travel distance for this rear shock is about 100 millimeters. So that should be plenty for most people. Surron rear fender right here. And then we have a pedal assist sensor located here on the bottom bracket that connects to the controller. So yeah, this is how you get some pedal assist going into the controller. And my guess is that they're using a custom far driver similar to the Frigo. So power wise, we have a 3,000 watt rated, 6,500 watt peak hub motor. So very beefy hub motor. So very popular for like stealth bombers. For the brakes, again, we have the DY Island style brakes, hydraulic brakes. Again, something that we could probably upgrade in the future. And it looks like the rotor is a 203 millimeter rotor as opposed to the 180 millimeter rotor on the front. And it looks like the tire is the same size as the front, 70-117. Pretty easy to swap this out with street tires if we wanted to. Showed you guys before, but this is the rear taillight. You also have the license plate holder right there. And you can see over here that it is a single gear, right? So there's no shifting required on this bike, which I prefer. And then on the swing arm, you have this torque arm over here and some adjustment bolts to align the rear wheel. And the total weight of the HappyRun G300 Pro is 136.8 pounds. So yeah, this thing is heavy. This thing weighs as much as a Surron, maybe a little bit more because of that hub motor there. So this is not something that you want to bring up a flight of stairs or anything like that. You definitely want to have dedicated storage for a bike this heavy. And the reason it's heavy is because it does have a carbon steel frame. So the steel obviously adds to the weight, but it also adds to the durability. It won't bend as easily as aluminum. But yeah, that's the compromise. You know, with all that weight and durability, you're gonna have a very, very heavy bike. So that's why I think maybe a 72 volt is perfect to haul around all that weight. Anyway, now that we've gone over all the features, I am gonna put on some easy plug and play mods before I go riding. Now this is, again, just a preference. It's not really gonna change or alter the review in significant ways. days. This is just something that I'd like to do. Full twist throttle over here. I'll probably change the grips as well. Riser handlebars, so it'll go here-ish. And I'm gonna use this direct stem mount, so I don't have to use this adjustment bar. I'll just use riser bars instead. And then I'll feel really comfortable riding this bike. Anyway, let's throw these on and then take the HappyRun G300 Pro out for its first ride.
At first glance, the G300 Pro leans heavy into that off-road aesthetic. It's got a carbon steel frame, 17-inch knobby tires, and full suspension. It feels more moto than mountain, but technically this thing comes with pedals, so you're still in e-bike territory, at least on paper. The 2000 lumen LED headlight is extremely bright and is matched by a rear tail light with integrated turn signals. There's a center-mounted LCD display that shows all the usual data, along with a right-hand, half-twist throttle. At 136.8 pounds, the G300 Pro is not light. Moving this bike around without power isn't fun, and loading it into the back of a car or onto a rack is going to require a ramp and a bit of planning, but that weight helps keep it planted when you're pushing through off-road terrain. The 3,000 watt rated, 6,500 watt peak rear hub motor puts this bike in a high performance category, and paired with a 72 volt, 30 amp hour removable battery, the G300 Pro is capable of pushing up to 50 miles per hour on flat terrain, although according to our GPS tests, it was closer to 46 miles per hour. You've also got 5 power modes controlled with either the throttle or pedal assist, but to be honest, it's more of a ghost pedal setup to appease bike path rules. Here's where it gets tricky. The controller tune is aggressive, especially in the low end. Modes 1 through 5 don't feel that different until you're already moving fast. There's a lot of torque off the line, which is great for dirt trails and hill climbs, but maybe a little much if you're just trying to roll through streets without drawing attention. In terms of range, HappyRun claims up to 60 miles, which feels ambitious. If you're full throttling it on off-road trails, you're probably looking at closer to 30 to 40, but if you're feathering throttle on flat pavement, that 60-mile mark isn't out of reach. The suspension setup is one of the best parts of this build. You've got a front suspension fork paired with a rear shock delivering 100 millimeters of travel. While it's not the most high-end system we've tested, it holds its own on grass and moderately rocky trails. Stopping power comes from hydraulic disc brakes, with a 180 millimeter front rotor and a beefier 203 millimeter rotor in the rear. It's a decent setup and enough stopping power for the weight of the bike.
All right guys, first ride with the HappyRun G300 Pro. So not exactly flat-footing the bike, about 5'5" tall. If you're taller than that, should be no issues whatsoever, especially with the 17-inch tires. So it's in park mode as soon as you turn on the bike, which means that the throttle won't work. And the only way to disable that is to squeeze the brake lever. So we're going to squeeze the right brake lever, and now we're on pedal assist 1. So we'll start at pedal assist level 1, okay, no throttle, and we'll just get right into it. Okay, the bike is very heavy and the motor kicks in as soon as you start pedaling. So not much modulation there, right? It's just kind of like I'm pedaling, boom, and then the motor kicks in. It's not really a torque sensor. It feels more like an on and off switch, to be honest. That's probably something that could be fixed with the tune, but it kind of is what it is. So we'll bump it up to pedal assist level 2 now, still no throttle. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to predict how many pedals I need to do for the bike to kind of coast on its own. I think because of the weight, and maybe there's some regen on it, the bike just kind of stops as soon as I stop pedaling. It really slows down a lot, which is not something I really like, because look, now I'm like struggling to get pedal assist to kick in again, and I gotta boom, and it just kind of turns on, right? We'll bump it up to pedal assist level 3 now, still no throttle. And it feels like I need even less amount of revolutions with my pedaling. So no real changes in terms of the delivery of the power and the pedal assist, pushing volts into the motor. It's no real calibration based on torque sensing or anything like that. See, so now it's like slowing down and almost at a dead stop until I kick it in again, right? So yeah, I don't know. It's okay. You know, I don't know if, you know, pedal assist is really quite practical for this bike, unless I was going at a steady rate of maybe like over 20 miles per hour. All right, we'll give it a little bit of throttle now. Still on pedal assist level 3. And The throttling feels way more intuitive. It feels a little bit easier to control and way more intuitive for how to handle this bike, right? Feels like a Surron with pedals. But again, the tune is still kind of touchy. It's still really strong on the low end. All right, now let's just bump it up to pedal assist level 5 now. Full power. And still just throttling. And I can kind of calibrate it a little bit, but I'm still not getting the coasting that I would prefer. It still feels like it's kind of just slowing me down as soon as I release the throttle, which, you know, may be good for, you know, not having to use your brakes all the time to have regen, but I personally don't prefer it. Now let's test out the brakes. I'm gonna go all the way down there, gather up some speed. We'll test the brakes out. And brakes. Not a big fan of these brakes, but for this bike, it actually works pretty well. Pedal assist level 3, see if we could get the wheel up. Ooh. Plenty of power. I'm on power level 5 and not really using the pedal assist. I'm just kind of like using the pedals to kind of shift my weight when I need to. And yeah, just feels very easy to control, very easy to turn. You just kind of have to watch where your feet are when you turn, right? Very cool, very easy. Let's try going up this hill, see what that feels like. All right, going up the hill, full speed, full power, suspension doing its thing, and no problem whatsoever. Yeah, I mean, if you're riding this thing off-road, it's kind of the perfect vehicle for that. And now I'm going up very steep incline. And back down again. No problem. Yeah, this thing is a blast. Very, very responsive. Again, you know, on the high end, kind of an awesome bike. But if you're trying to ride this at slower speeds, it's not so fun, right? But like going up these hills, no problem. No problem. Man, just kind of eats these hills up. Very cool. All right. Yeah. Riding it like this, super fun. You know, kind of like at a high speed, high velocity. Very easy to control. Okay, first impressions with the HappyRun G300 Pro. Lots of power, right? That 72 volt battery is very, very powerful. You can definitely keep up with traffic, tons of torque on the low end, but it's almost a little too much torque for my liking, especially when you're trying to slow down or go through like bike paths or, you know, places where you don't really need that much torque. There's so much power on the low end, it just kind of throws volts into the motor. It just needs to be smoothed out just a little bit, right? Just a little bit. In terms of comfort, I think the suspension is pretty decent. If you're riding this off-road, I think you'll be totally fine. The stock shock that it comes with is pretty good for my weight, but it looks like something you can easily swap out if you want something that's a little bit more high performance. Same thing with the forks. Feels like a Surron with pedals, right? That's pretty much how I would describe it. I think I would recommend this bike for probably intermediate or experienced riders. Not really something I would recommend for beginners. That's 72 volts. If you don't know how to handle it, it'll definitely throw you on your back. I do think that the price point for what you get for all the features, the 72 volt battery, you know, the suspension, the steel frame, the integrated headlight, I think this is like 2,000 or 3,000 lumens or something like that. It's a really, really good looking bike, you know, for what it is. But also, even though it has pedals, you're going to attract attention. So if you're riding this in the bike lanes, you might get some dirty looks. And this also might be in the legal gray area, depending on where you live, like for sure, 100%. There's no getting around it, even though it has pedals. The tune was a little bit better. I think this would be like just an automatic recommend.
Ready? 50 on the display. That's about it. That's about all she wrote. Not too bad, not too bad.
All right, going on the roads here, letting it full throttle, give it a little pedaling, hitting about 40 miles per hour, 43, 45, 48, and about 50 miles per hour on the display. We'll let it loose, release the throttle here, but yeah, it hit about 50 miles per hour on the display. We'll have to check on the Insta360 app to see if it actually recorded 50 miles per hour. Definitely didn't feel wobbly at all. I think above 30 or around 30 feels like the sweet spot. Top speed run was pretty good. Okay, now I'm gonna kind of lower the pedal assist here, keep it at 4, and it feels like maybe there's some like regen. What was that? Like almost like the regen is turned up, so it's kind of like stopping the bike a little bit. It's not really coasting. So again, we have to kind of get into the controller to know if we could change that. But I'm not quite sure this tune is exactly how I would like to ride this thing. Feeling pretty good on this road. A lot of cracks in the road, but no issues whatsoever. Now, in terms of pedal assist, it doesn't really kick in until a couple of revolutions, right? And then obviously once you hit almost above 20 miles per hour, you're just kind of ghost pedaling at that point. So, but I am pedaling, it's hitting past 30 miles per hour. No throttle, just pedaling here. But the modulation between pedaling and throttle just takes some getting used to. Again, it's just so touchy. Even the pedal assist is kind of touchy. So just something to think about. But yeah, if you're riding it through like, you know, windy roads like this, up hills, it can definitely handle it for sure. No problem. Comfort-wise, the saddle seat is like a typical Surron saddle seat, not a ton of cushion. So, you know, kind of is what it is. You could probably get a modification if you want more cushion on the seat. Brakes aren't bad. They are actually a lot better than I thought they would be. We had the DIY Island brakes on the Frigo X2 Pro, and I wasn't really impressed with them. But for the HappyRun, they're actually performing pretty well. Probably gonna hit a speed bump and hitting about 38, 40 miles per hour down this stretch. All right, so now we are on a bike trail, so I am going to go at a lower speed here in case we hit some pedestrians or some bikers. Now I'm pedaling on pedal assist level 2 and not a ton of modulation. I'm just trying to figure out the sweet spot for pedaling this bike. And if I do too much pedaling, it's going to go a little bit too fast. If I don't pedal at all, it's going to regen or something to stop me. So there needs to be just a little bit of a better tune, a little bit of nitpicking, because I think this bike definitely has a lot of potential. For sure, has a lot of potential, but it needs a better tune. Looks like I am dipping down on one battery bar. Keep in mind, it is very cold, so there might be some voltage depletion because of the cold. Although I don't feel any voltage sag, so that's a good sign.
All right, guys, Sully here. HappyRun G300 Pro. All right, so normally this bike comes with the brakes mountain bike style. We swapped them to be moto style, so the rear is on this side now instead of the front being on this side, the left. The bars are swapped to be slightly rise bars, and there's a full twist throttle on it. Those little upgrades are always good to put on bikes if they have like little half twist throttles, and if you're used to whatever brake style you're used to, whatever. Overall, the bike's a good size. The cranks seem a little short. Suspension, front shock feels pretty good. Rear shock feels pretty good. No complaints there. I mean, I wouldn't say they're the world's best suspension, but I don't know how much they cost. I'm sure these are all technically, I believe, Surron parts. That's a Surron fender. That's a Surron rear. That's a Surron rear. Brakes feel good. We'll see how they hit in practice. I was told that this bike is a little spicy down low, so I'm gonna start in mode 2 and work my way up from there. Yeah, it is down low. No matter if you give it full throttle or quarter throttle, it's pretty much the same launch. So, I mean, I've ridden a lot of bikes like that, so I'm kind of used to it. But if you're not used to something like that, it'll be a little weird at first. Okay, so it is wheelieable. Pops up under its own power, which is good. It's a little touchy with the throttle, like I'm saying. Let me try putting both my feet down. So yeah, both your feet down, it's really manageable. The throttle, like I said, is very jumpy. So like when you get in it, you can see it just wants to go. But then once you get past that, it starts to plane out. So it's really misleading for throttle feel for wheelies. But as far as like taking off though, I mean, it definitely gives it that umph. To where like bikes that don't have that are very smooth, so they're not going to take off as quickly. So it's a trade-off. So let's check out the pedal assist now. So just pedaling, not hitting the throttle. It takes a second to kick in, it seems. Yep, about 2 miles an hour it starts to kick in. It stays activated a little bit after you're done pedaling. It's like a little delayed, but it's pretty quick response. I mean, it feels super balanced. Let's go into 3 now, maybe. Yeah, it's a little bit more. Let's just kick it right into 5. Why not? See what that's all about. Oh yeah. Yeah, that woke her up. Cranks could definitely be a little longer, but then you lose turning. It just feels like you're pedaling a monkey bike, like one of those bikes you're pedaling like this, you're not going anywhere. But it's not meant for that. It's not meant to actually propel you. It's just meant to activate the pedal assist. So it all makes sense. So we're in mode 5 now. We're gonna try a wheelie in mode 5. I'm gonna have to be moving a little bit or I'm gonna die. Oh my God, yeah, I don't know about this. Hold on, turn around. Just put both my feet down and brace for the worst. Oh Jesus. It's very touchy. Mode 3 might be good. Mode 2 was pretty good, so mode 3 might be about the sweet. Oh nope, it's still very touchy down low. You can't give it any throttle at all without it just being a blast in the face. If you can manage your brakes good enough, you can coast it out. And once you hit that like plane, it's very smooth, but when you go slow enough, it kicks you like a donkey. The brakes, I've been having to 2-finger the rear brake. The front brake feels really good. I haven't tried to stop it yet. Maybe I'll try that real quick. Yeah, they just need to get a little warmed up. I bet you we just haven't used them enough. The pads aren't bed in properly yet. Rick is definitely not a fan of the low-end torque of the tune that's on these types of bikes. I prefer the smooth tune as well. That's how I have my Surron personally tuned, is very smooth, and most people who try to ride it are like, how do you even wheelie this thing? Well, it's just what I'm used to. So, I mean, you can get used to anything. So let's ride this thing off-road and see what she's all about. So we got just these little like humps and bumps in this field here. And the suspension's taking it really good. The rear shock is definitely putting in more work than the front. The front could be a little better, but I'm not really complaining. It's still pretty dang good. Try to stay out of the lower places because it just dried up here, so everything's still a little wet, a little soft. Don't want to leave a bunch of marks and stuff everywhere. But yeah, the brakes, you know, they could be a little better. Let's go Let's go down. Let's send it up this hill here. Yeah, it took the hill like a champ. We're definitely not on full battery anymore, so from the full speed tests and everything, but off-road it feels a lot better than it does on-road with that tune. You definitely want that little bit of kick for off-road activities. It definitely makes it feel a little more awake, if you will. And yeah, handling wise, handles really good. The tires are really good. And then again, this is like some really soft and still a little wet grass. So yeah, overall, no complaints.
Compared to the Frigo X2 Pro, let me actually make some comparisons to the Frigo X2 Pro. Now, with the Frigo X2 Pro, I think the biggest difference is the weight, right? This is a significantly heavier bike, even though I think on paper, they're pretty similar in terms of weight, but just like in my real world experience thus far, this definitely feels like a heavier bike. Now that's maybe because of the 72 volt battery, it might be because of the steel frame, although the Frigo is also a steel frame, so I'm not quite sure what's happening there. I think the motors are pretty much the same weight, but other than that, I don't really know what significant differences there would be in terms of the weight distribution. So not much pedaling when I'm riding through a city like this, through downtown, only because I don't really have the same kind of modulation with the pedaling as I do with the throttle, right? So like a revolution of pedaling on this bike means lots of torque off the line, which as you know, when there's a lot of starts and stops like this, you want to have a little bit more control. In terms of the pedaling, I don't know the exact height of these crank arms, but they are like, you know, whatever the shortest crank arms you could get for the bottom bracket is, but I think that's because the 17-inch wheels make it pretty low to the ground, so if they used longer crank arms, it would definitely scrape the ground. But like handling and turning and all that good stuff, it's very, very nice. And because it's a hub motor, it's just a little quieter. And if you threw street wheels or street tires on this bike, you would be super silent. So if that's kind of what you want, you know, like kind of low-key sound-wise, but maybe a little attention grabbing if we were just talking about visuals, it's kind of a nice compromise between those two things. Someone in our YouTube channel asked if this motor is actually an authentic or genuine QS motor. I did check the motor. It doesn't have anything that says QS. There's no branding that says it's QS, so I'm assuming it's generic hub motor for 6,000 watt or 6,500 watt peak hub motor bikes, because the motor looks like it's the same size as the Frigo X2 Pro. I think that if you were in the market for a Frigo X2 Pro, this would definitely be a good consideration based on the pricing, but it is different, right? It's not a one-to-one comparison. The 72 volts is something to really, really consider, because it actually makes a huge difference of how this thing rides and how this thing feels. It for sure feels more like a proper dirt bike. It definitely feels more like a Surron. And, you know, I thought the Frigo felt like a Surron, but this really feels like a Surron. Now, despite it being 72 volts, I do feel like the top speed is limited somewhat in the controller as well. It did say that I hit 50 miles per hour going down one of the roads I was on, but I think the slope might have helped with that, and I'm not quite sure how accurate it was when I was recording it on the GPS. I feel like it was a little bit off. It didn't feel like I was going 50 miles per hour. Now, one thing I will add is that once you get into this class of e-bike where it's like really powerful and you're going over 40 miles per hour, the bike costs, you know, over 2,500 bucks. You want to be able to kind of get into the controller. You want the customer to have access into the controller, right? So That's something that I would definitely want to urge some of these companies to do. I know, having the ability to unlock the controller would probably be a liability for certain companies, but there should be some kind of agreement or something that the customer can sign to kind of waive them of that liability so that they can go into the controller and really tune it based on their preferences and how they like to ride. Because there really is no one-size-fits-all tune, especially when you get into bikes of this stature.
So here's what we like. The full suspension system gives this bike a real advantage on off-road terrain. The 72-volt power delivery means instant torque, strong acceleration, and top speeds that compete with other high-powered e-bikes in its class. And the G300's hub motor setup is quieter, simpler, and requires less maintenance than a mid-drive setup. But here's some things to consider. The controller low-end torque hits hard. There's not a lot of nuance, and that might catch newer riders off guard. At nearly 140 pounds, this isn't something you toss in the trunk. Transport and storage will take some planning. And depending on where you live, this bike sits in a gray area. You'll want to check your local laws before trying to pass it off as a Class 3 e-bike. Overall, the HappyRun G300 Pro has a lot of impressive features for the price. And while it might not check every box for street riding, it brings legit power and comfort for riding off-road. Still, I'd love the option to tune the controller to refine the power delivery, especially on the low end. So what do you think of the G300 Pro? Is it the high-powered e-bike you've been searching for, or do you want more? Let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you guys in the next video.